Welcome to the Voices series, bringing insights from leaders in all forms of design. This is Christina Goodrich with Design's Voice, and I welcome you to part 2 of the Voices interview series with Bob Schwartz, General Manager of Global Design for GE Healthcare and a fellow member of IDSA. Bob, you were telling us about how lessons from theater are helping to break down barriers and enhance collaborative spirit at GE Healthcare. Can you tell us what you do when faced with entrenched opposition?
So I'll tell a little story about Jane Alexander, the actress, who was the chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts during that period called the Contract with America. And the sort of Republican-dominated Congress at the time just had decided that the National Endowment for the Arts was unnecessary. It was left-leaning. We're going to get rid of you. We're going to cut off your funding. We're going to kill you. And Jane Alexander told this wonderful story that I heard her say over and over again, how she had a lunch with Senator Jesse Helms, probably the top of the arch rivals at that time. And mostly through the lunch in his very pleasant Southern gentlemanly way, he explained to her how he was going to do everything in his power, politically and every other way, to destroy that institution, to take it off the map. This is what was going to happen. But then at the end, he said to her, but I'm going to tell you how you're going to beat me. And he talked to her about there are people who love you, and you want them to continue to do that, and you're going to nurture them. And there are people who hate you, and you're not going to change them. And then there are the fence sitters, the Humpty Dumptys, who don't know which way to teeter off the wall. Those are the people to focus upon. So you're going to have a lot of naysayers in whatever you do. You're going to have people who resist. Leave them behind. Let them cry a river of tears when they realize they've been left behind. Find the fence sitters and tip them over into your direction a little bit. Get an early win with them, and others will follow. We tend to think we can talk in our own language all the time and don't have to worry about how other people take things up, how other people process information. Are we linear, nonlinear? Is this a person who's measured in a very, very different way? So what I've learned is that the best people that I've retained or that are on my team, and for my own career advancement, that I need to show up in a way that says I understand my audience and can adapt, not change my values, but adapt in a way that allows my customer to accept the product I'm selling, which is essentially our ideas. I think about change in 3 ways, and I probably didn't make this up. It was probably put in my head somewhere, but I live by it. And I see change in 3 stages. So I came onto the scene in GE and by default announced change was coming. So that creates a certain amount of anxiety that you have to deal with, and you have to recognize, oh my gosh, change is coming. What's that going to mean to me? A lot of team members sort of go there instantly. And maybe people who have worked in traditional ways with our organization, they react in the same way. Well, something about design is changing, we heard, and they're doing all these crazy things we never saw before in General Electric or in whatever the company was. So there's that phase. Then there's the period where you're formulating change. Now this is actually the most interesting one for me, because you're flying the airplane while building it, as my good friend and former boss Claudia Kochka used to say at P&G. And the ideas are cooking. You're building on them. They're half-baked, but they're out there because you're working, if you're doing it right, with everybody on what does the change look like. What are the operating mechanisms you're going to use? How will it be more or less rigorous? How will you become more creative, more in touch with nature? I mean, all of that is in the mix. And so folks have a tendency, again, human nature, to leap to the conclusion of what they think change is and what these formulas will mean, and the game of telephone starts, where suddenly the seed of an idea circles back to you a couple of weeks or months later, and it's completely transformed, it's completely negative, and all of a sudden, oh, well, we're going to go get design from the outside now. We're just going to hire consultants and everybody's going to get fired. when it really started with, no, we're going to, work with outside partners to learn our way to new capability that can get transformed. And you can get into that negative spin, which can be very, very deadly. So you have to carefully manage, and through that you have to make sure you communicate and communicate. And oh, by the way, did I tell you you have to communicate? And you have to ask a lot of questions. You need to get points of view from other than your own filter. We've engaged some great outside mentors, somebody I call my personal board of directors, people inside and outside the company who I kind of use as individuals to kind of keep their finger on various filters that I can't see through, lenses I can't see through, and help me understand what's really going on. Because, as a leader, you usually don't hear it all. There's plenty of baloney in the pipe that nobody's going to tell you because, oh my God, we don't want him to know. So you got to have ways of that kind of proactive, positive intelligence gathering. So the third stage of change, which in fact we find our global design team, I think, is right now. We have our team at the Humpty Dumpty point. We're on that wall. We've formulated a lot of the things that we want to do that are very, very different, in some cases radically different, reorganized globally. We have people at different kinds of jobs with different kinds of titles doing very different kinds of things. And so now we all have to tip over into that world of now change is being implemented. And the important thing there is not to legislate it. You got to do some of that. The important thing there is to have everybody own it and believe it and feel it inside. We do have to do this using techniques of developing empathy. And we've actually done around the world empathy workshops. We make it very personal. We all have personal stories from our lives, from our families that, frankly, if we start to talk about them, the tears flow. We get all verklempt. It's very difficult. And we've taken each of our teams through one of these workshops and made them internalize what it is we're talking about. We're talking about them as owners of their destiny. We're talking about these changes that we're doing. It's not meant to tell you, well, you can't be the designer you always were, and now you have to work with outside people, and I need for you to show up as a business. All that stuff's really scary. You got to create that support network. You got to help them own it. I want them to tell me the answer of how to take these core ideas and create the kind of communities of practice around those of them who are doing similar kinds of things. I don't want to legislate that after effect. I want to see them be the creatives who help figure out what does it mean to be a single point of contact to one of our businesses? What does it mean to be a regional studio operations manager? What does it mean to be somebody who is a sort of maybe one of the keepers of the flame of the aesthetic direction or the design language principle direction we're going? You guys need to own that. I don't need to own that. I need, as a leader, craft a vision and create the environment that allows it to happen and be out ahead and clear the weeds. They need to own the implementation. And in fact, as we speak, Kristina here in Milwaukee, my entire global team is in town for a week of kind of moving now into that implementation phase, moving into that third stage of change, which is everybody is an owner. And watch this space. We'll see how it turns out.
Thank you very much, Bob, for sharing your time and your insights. I invite our viewers to share their comments and view other interviews in the Voices series, featured on designsvoice.com, idsa.org, and youtube.com. This is Christina Goodrich of Designs Voice, thanking you for joining us.